it's really intimidating to be like, okay, so I have to draw this really intricate
Hmm.
illustration, and I'm at a point where, I have to make sure everything is proportionally right and yada yada. And so, um, doodling is a great way for you to loosen up for the day. It's loosening up. It's getting eye-hand coordination. It's problem solving. It's opening up your mind's eye. It's accomplishing something for the day.
Hmm.
Um, and it's, as I said before, you can use it as reference. It's a great way to, get new characters and stuff. But, yeah, like I think that even if you were to spend just like a few minutes doodling, um, what you're doing is you're uh getting yourself uh hopefully, if you do have that like anxiety within you to be like, I gotta do something, it'll help get rid of it, right?
Yes, and I think it's important to remember that doodling is not time wasted, right? Where it's like maybe like, "Oh, but I'm just doodling." It's like, no, that's opening up your mind. It's allowing your creative juices to flow. It's getting, your hand-eye coordination warmed up, all of those things. And it's not meant to be perfect. And that's also a really great thing to do because so much of what we spend our time doing is refining and making something presentable and perfect. And to actually do an exercise with a goal of it not being perfect and knowing that that's actually what you're trying to do, it's really nice and really
Yeah.
freeing, and we don't
Yeah.
do enough of that.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of why me personally, uh, doing this imagination factory experiment that we're doing
Yeah.
is part like there's an uncomfortableness for me to put myself out there where I'm like, yeah, these are not necessarily the best I can do. Like, this is not something where, especially when it's spontaneous and there's no plan, even if it's something that, the structure of it's kind of good. Like, I'll go back to we had done a Twitch, the previous one with uh, Leonard and Pip, where it's the
Yeah.
Western, which, I mean, for the most part, I liked it.
Mhm.
Color, like the way I colored it was very rushed. And it was more because it was like, oh, there's only like 10 or 15 minutes left. I just want to get this done in a certain amount of time. And I thought about it. I'm like, well, we could try to spend another 20 minutes on our next
Mhm.
show, but I'm like, I'll let it go. Like, I have to let it go. I know I can do better. I know that it's not representative per se of like my coloring abilities. And so I keep that in mind anytime you're
Mhm.
watching this stuff. As I've said before, as you've said, a lot of this is trial and error and failure, and
Yeah.
so it's not going to always be the thing that you want it to be, especially when we're doing these Twitch episodes, which are just super loose and spontaneous. When if I'm being hired for something, there's a lot more structure usually. So,
Mhm.
and it's not to say that like this is a really great lesson in how you can come up with ideas and how you can um, like just get your imagination sparked. But
Absolutely.
if you had like a bit more direction, then obviously you can like maybe what I would recommend is just drawing something for the pure fun of it, seeing if you can get ideas from it. And then once you've done that, quickly, loosely, uh, go and with the direction you have, see if you can take any of those things and transfer them over. So maybe you're not doing a story like this one. Maybe you're doing something where it's more historically based. So you're not going to have these characters and a shark and all that stuff. But you may go, oh, you know what? This gave me ideas on how to render rocks really well. Like, I like how I really kind of integrated the rocks into the ground here. I'm going to use that for when I do the uh scenes where you may have rocks, or maybe you're like maybe some of these characters show up
Mhm.
refined or changed because they have to be more historically accurate, but you can still like use their shapes or some of the detail, right? And so um there is always, as you said, there's always use out of doodling. I would say these are like more refined doodles,
Mhm.
right? The show that we have where we actually have an ongoing, uh, um, we're going to finish 6 pages of comic book sequentials. That one's much more structured. That
Yes.
one, there is going to be more thought put into how it's going to look. And even then, I would say it's still not completely, because it takes so long to do something like that. We
Hmm.
may have to like be okay with this isn't as exactly refined as I would do normally, but I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I think there is something to be said about having something that's a little bit looser, right?
Absolutely. And I kind of liken what we're doing here to improv. And I've said that before. This is sort of the, writing and drawing version of improv where everything is just kind of coming out, it's free flowing. And the most important thing, and even if you're doing this just yourself, the most important thing to remember is to not put up brick walls, right? So don't completely like, if Keith's like, what about if the ogre was a child who did something and now they're an ogre? And I was just like, I don't like that. Okay. Right. And that's one of the things you have to fight yourself from doing, as opposed to being like, okay, cool. What about this? And adding to it, changing it, working with it, and not just constantly putting up like, no, not working, not good. I don't like that. And that can be a really tough thing to get used to doing, especially if you are with somebody else and it's somebody else's idea and maybe it's not exactly where you were going to go, to be like, how can we integrate that, move forward, add to it, put it into something, as opposed to immediately put the brakes on because it's not 100% what you were thinking of doing. And
Yeah.
teaching yourself how to do that is a huge skill and will help you so much in the creative industry, especially if you are going to be working with other people, whether it be, a creative director, a writer, anybody else that's sort of around you as part of a team. If you can't ever take, thoughts, ideas, suggestions from other people you're working with, you will have a really hard time. And you don't have to take everything and be like, perfect, your idea is always better than mine. I'm going to do whatever you say. But you also don't always want to slam the door on somebody else. You want to figure out how to incorporate it or work with it or, augment it so that it feels like a team effort and you're moving forward. You're not just, throwing things at each other and constantly like hitting walls on both sides.
Yeah. So, kind of with that in mind, this third character here,
Mhm.
the one that I'm kind of turning into, like that has like a underwater kind of apparatus.
Yep.
What do you think about that pose? Like, I was kind of one of the thoughts I had was, so you have this one, the one on the bottom jumping down. You got the one with the rock that's going to like replace it.
Yep.
Uh, and then you've got the third one looking where basically I'm creating the story here that using the idea that we had about, okay, what if one of them recognizes the ogre
Mm,
as being right?
yeah.
And so I was just thinking, like, what I don't necessarily want them jumping down. I want them kind of almost like they're about to slide down. What is your thought? Do you in regards to this?
Yeah, I like the one that's closest to the ogre's face being the one that makes the aha moment of recognition, right? Like I think that makes the most sense because they're right up close, and the other two are so busy occupied with the treasure that this one's the one that could be like, hold on, I think I recognize this guy. Um, yeah, I do like that he's got like kind of that underwater kind of opposite, right? As opposed to needing it to, dive into the water, he needs it to come up on land. I think that's really fun.
And the pose, the
Yeah. I think that the pose of him kind of like not jumping, but looking like he's about to sort of make a break for it is good. Like it's like he's about to like almost like sit down and slide off the ogre's side.
hmm yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was just again, these are all things that you um uh, like if there was a bit more of a story here, if I knew a little bit more as to like the motivations of each character, you may make different choices in regards to like how you would pose them, and then how you would um like the order in which they'd be on the character scene, and then also like uh the
Yeah.
the narrative that's being told would change potentially, right? So this is all again on the spot. That's why I was wondering. I'm like, I think this works. I think it's okay, but
Yeah.
I
I like
mean,
too that they all sort of have a different idea of how to go about the treasure, right? Like I like the swashbuckler with like, I got the big rock to replace it. And it looks like he's awkward and trying to, to follow his idea. And they each sort of, the other
mhm,
one's got kind of bags in his hands and stuff. Like I like that they all sort of, you can see that they're not a team. They all have
yeah,
the same goal, but they're definitely not working together. Which I think is really, really fun because they do feel like it is a bit of this, they've all ended up in this place without really a plan, and the plan has changed in the moment, and they're all trying to go about it differently.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to. I guess now that's what I'm trying to get across a
Mhm,
little bit. But as I said before, like a lot of this stuff is so spontaneous that if you were doing this as a cover, I would do first of all, I'd make this much smaller, and I would do different like variations of it to kind of
mhm,
get a sense of like, unless there was an idea I had very very clearly. But if I was trying to figure out like, what's the best way to tell this story in a way where the audience, the viewers, like, oh, I get it, I understand what's happening, it makes sense to me, it's clear to me. That would be how you would approach it, right? If you wanted to make sure you were getting the clearest possible and most interesting or
mhm,
evocative kind of uh, illustration, you would go through those steps to be a little bit more uh, careful, I guess. These are just very spontaneous, and so I like it. I like the story. I think that it's fun to do a composition where you have no safety net in some ways. You're just kind of like
just
tightrope walking. Yeah, you're like, I hope I don't fall, and um but that's the fun of it, right?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing too is there isn't any measure of what it was supposed to be, right?
Yeah,
So there isn't that falling in that it's like, oh no, I set out to do this and I didn't achieve it. This is purely like it's making it up as you go along. And I actually think that this particular composition, this scene works really nicely to kind of give that chaos, right? Which is essentially the center of this story is like it's a treasure hunt with chaos and characters coming from all over the place and this ogre child with his shark and like everything about it is meant for you to kind of look at it and be like, what is happening? And that was kind of the goal of this particular scene anyways, was to give you that feeling of like, what is going on here? And the longer you look at it, the weirder it gets in a really good way, right? Because you start to notice other things like, wait, why is that guy got a like is he from outer space? Why has he got something on his head? And it's like, oh, he's from the ocean. And this one's just like, and it does, the more you look at it, the more you notice. And that's kind of the goal of this particular moment in time, this freeze frame, is to kind of catch everybody in mid chaos as everything that could go wrong will go wrong.
yeah. Well, that's right. And I do like to try to, I think the more weird and quirky you can make like a illustration or a scene,
Mhm,
that where you have where you can afford to do it, like where it's not requiring, um it's not going to take away from the viewer's focus in any way, where it's just like, like if you have a close up, just somebody's face, so that's a little bit more difficult. Or if it's an action scene and you're just focusing on what
mhm,
they're doing. But like when you have this establishing shot where, yeah, it's a little bit of a hybrid action establishing shot, but um, it gives me the ability to uh, play around with all different kinds of ideas of things that I've seen from shows and movies and or things I've
mhm,
read to like put them in here and see what kind of weird stuff I can get that just makes it a much more unique world, right? And then I think that was kind of my question earlier, is like creating these characters.
mhm.
How do you like come up with, how do you break out of some of those little bit more troped,
Yep.
tired troped type of looks for characters. Like, how do you make them a little bit more interesting? And I get what you're saying when it's like, well, yeah, the pirate's going to be looking like a pirate, but they may act very much not quite like a pirate.
Yeah,
Uh, my job is to take like some of that and how do I visualize it, right? Uh,
absolutely.
and so it's a combination between the writer um, giving like complimentary or adding things that the artist really can't show uh, in that personality, right?
And I think it's always really important to, if you want an artist to bring a character to life in a way that fits the story and the character you've designed, is you have to give the right kind of descriptions, right? So this isn't always about, sometimes people focus so much on what someone looks like, right? Being like, oh, they had a long nose and red spiky hair and all these things. But sometimes the actual more important thing is the actual, like, what's inside the character, right? Like, they're very shy and they're nervous and they, walk slightly behind everybody else and because then it starts to give a personality to that character. And sometimes what they physically look like isn't as important as how they act, what their personality is, how they would be in a group, those underlying things like, the fear that they have, right? Sometimes that's that unique thing about that character, that maybe that, our swashbuckler with the heavy rock or whatever, has the fear of being like left alone, being the last man standing, right? He wants to get that rock in so that he can get back to his ship before he's left alone with the ogre, right? You give them these interesting little quirks. And then that gives different motivations for how they do things and how they would move through a space and act. What color his hair is really doesn't matter as much necessarily, unless it's really important to the story. But sometimes it is those like personality traits and those, fears and those kinds of things that allow you to make a character that does feel and look less like that standard trope and more like a fully realized person.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where the combination, the marriage of the creative team,
Mhm.
adding different elements that make for a really kind of compelling story, right? You
Yeah,
got a colorist who's going to make the colors in this just really otherworldly or whatever they need to be. Or, you have the letterer giving like the way the characters talk. Like you can hear the way that they sound because of the way that the
yeah,
lettering is done, right? So all of those things um, contribute to making a really unique place, right? Um, and so it just for me, it's one of those things where um, I'm always trying to, as I've gotten more and more into doing this, like I'm always trying to see if I can m- make uh, elevate myself, elevate
mhm,
the way that I world build something so that it feels much more authentic than something that is just like, this is what this is supposed to look like. Put this here, and this is what this, right?
yeah.
And it's so it has like it looks like you can understand where the world is, but there's nothing really super unique about it. You're not seeing like uh any litter on the ground. You're not seeing like spray paint on the wall. You're not seeing it. It doesn't feel lived in, right? Um,
Absolutely. And I think that that right there is a huge reason why somebody, when they're starting out as an artist, might not understand why someone would push back and be like, this just doesn't, it's not jumping off the page. It's not doing anything for me. It doesn't feel unique. And they're like, but it's perfect, right? I did exactly what you said. There's the wall and there's the person and it's this and that. It's like, but it just feels like you just literally read my brief and illustrated it versus brought any flavor or interest to it. Because a lot of times that's when something starts to come alive, is when it's like, well, yeah, I know that you said that there was a wall, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was some, graffiti in the corner that looked, and it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, but you brought something new, you added some flavor, you made it more interesting and more unique. I love that. And that's sometimes those little things that add that nuance, that up it a level versus literally delivering on a brief.